So first and foremost, what I want you guys to know is as we're talking about taxes, there are some resources that can be very helpful to you. Okay, and the very first one that I posted on this little whiteboard here is irs.gov. Now the IRS is Internal Revenue Service. This is the governmental agency that basically enforces and writes the tax code and all that fun stuff. So they're kind of in charge of the fact that we pay taxes, if that makes sense. And if you don't pay your taxes when you're supposed to or something along those lines, they're also the ones that enforce any consequences that come with that. So irs.gov is a location that you can go to find a lot of your questions that you have about taxes and what you need to pay and things like that. And one of the questions that got asked frequently through your guys' questioning option was to ask, is the IRS a trustworthy organization? Are they somebody that I can trust? And the answer is yes, but you always want to double check. You always want to have, it's a governmental agency. It's just like the police force, but for taxes. So you want to be able to trust them, and you should, but you can always verify and double check the facts and things like that to make sure that you're doing things properly. Can the IRS make mistakes? Yes. Yes, they can. But just like they know people can make mistakes, they have constantly people checking up on their work to make sure that they're doing it accurately and getting things corrected when necessary. So as far as them being trustworthy, the answer is yes, they're pretty trustworthy, but you want to always verify and you want to always make sure that they did things accurately because they're still human. They still make mistakes, and things sometimes still do need to be corrected. And it might take a little while, but the process will eventually be corrected. So IRS is one of the sources that you can use. Another source that you can use when learning about taxes is turbotax.com. TurboTax is an online filing system, but they will also answer a lot of your questions, and they have a chat feature and stuff like that where you can talk with tax specialists about questions that you have, and so that's a great resource. Also, H&R Block, they do a lot of the same things online, but they also have like offices and things around. I think there's one in Paola, and there's maybe one maybe in Fort Scott as well. But they have various offices where you can actually go and meet with somebody face-to-face and ask questions as well as filing online. So these are just some options that are available to you that are pretty common and ways for you to find information that you have. So just know that you have these sources, and these sources, along with my already knowledge and my instruction that I've received about taxes, are how I'm going to answer your questions that you guys asked today. So basically, we're going to spend the rest of the hour or the rest of this time together answering questions that you guys asked. So giving you answers to your questions. And I'm going to start by going over the concepts that I felt were covered last week, but maybe I need to cover them a little bit better because it seemed like there were some questions about them that maybe I didn't do a good enough job. So I'm going to try and do better this week. But one of the very first questions that I want to go over is the difference between a W-2 and a W-4. There were a couple of questions about this, and so I just want to make sure that even though I went over it last week, that everybody has a proper understanding of this. A W-2 is what you actually use to file your taxes. So when you actually sit down and are filling out your taxes, you should have gotten something from your employer called a W-2 that will show you your name, your social security number. It'll tell you how much you made that year from that employer, how much was taken out for different taxes, and literally that's the piece of paper that you're going to use to file your taxes. And what the tax form, the 1040, will say, as you're going through and filling out your information, it'll say, look at your W-2. In this box on your W-2, write that number here. And then in this box on your W-2, write that number here. And it'll say if there's nothing there, write 0 or something along those lines. And so it literally will tell you where to look for the information you need on your W-2 and where to write it and how to write it on the tax form. And then that's what you'll do when you actually submit your taxes, is you'll turn in your 1040, which is a tax form, and file your taxes. And that was a question that got asked too. Is filing your taxes the same as filling out your taxes? Yes, only if you actually send it in digitally or by mail, that it actually counts. But that is the same process. So doing your taxes or filing your tax return, those mean the same thing. Okay, now I told you about the W-2. A W-4, when you first get employed somewhere, they're going to have you fill out what's called a W-4 form. And what you're going to do is you're going to put your name on that. You're going to also put your social security number on that, because this is some information that the government does need to verify that you are who you are. And then you're going to tell them how much you want withheld. That's what the W stands for on W-4, withheld or withholdings. How much do you want the government to take out of your paycheck? Well, if you put 0, it's going to be the reverse of what you would think. That means that they're going to take out more because you're not claiming any dependents. But if you claim 1, they're going to take out a little bit less. And if you take 2, they're going to take out a little bit less. And then 3, a little bit less, and 4, and all so on and so forth. Now, a withholding, the amount of withholdings you have is not exactly equivalent to people. Okay, so like technically 3 withholdings would be 1 child for me. So if I have 3 children, then I'm doing 3 times 3, 9 withholdings that I could claim. And, things like that. So one of the questions got at, so basically you're putting how much you want the government to take out of your paycheck, so that way you don't owe when the time comes around. And if you've got people to take care of and people who are dependent on your income, you want to make sure you put some of the withholdings there so that the government's not taking quite as much of your money along the way, and that way you're getting to use your money that is yours. So that's kind of the difference between a W-4. W-4 you fill out when you start working somewhere to say how much you want them to take out. W-2 is what you use to actually file your taxes and actually to fill out the form. And that's based on what's already happened. So that's the difference between the two. A question that got asked is, if I am 18 and I'm still living at home with my parents, do I have to file? Well, it depends. Do you want any of your money back from the government that belongs to you? And that's really the biggest question to answer, is if the government took money that they shouldn't have taken from you, that was yours all along, do you want that back? And if the answer is yes, then you should file. If the answer is nope, the government can just keep my money, that's fine, then don't file. The government's not going to come after you if they owe you money. They're going to come after you if you owe them money. So the biggest question is if you should file is if you're going to get a refund. And if you're going to get a refund, then you absolutely should file, because that's money that's yours. It's money that belongs to you, and you should get that money. And the government shouldn't just get to use it and have it for free. So, that's one of the questions that gets asked is, do I need to file? What's going to happen to me? Well, nothing if you get a refund if you don't file. But if you're missing out on money that belongs to you. Another question that got asked, it says, what's the difference between gross income and net income? Well, gross is the amount that you, in theory, make. So if I make $10 an hour, like if I sign up to go and take this job, I agree to work, and they said that they're going to pay me $10 an hour, and I work for 20 hours, that week I should earn $200, 20 times 10. That's the gross pay. That's what I signed on to work for. But on my paycheck, after they take out state tax and federal tax and FICA, it might look more like $150. That's what we call the net pay. It's the amount that we receive on our paycheck after taxes have been taken out. So that's the difference between gross and net. Gross is a bigger word. It's 5 letters long, so it's a bigger amount of money. Net is a smaller word. It's 3 letters long, so it's a smaller amount of money. It's after taxes. So that's the difference between the two. Somebody asked, and this might affect more of you than I originally thought, but, is claiming dependence in a divorce situation, is that laid out and how it should be handled? And so a lot of times if your parents were to get divorced or something like that, part of their discussions in the divorce process will be over who has custody of the children and who gets to claim them on their taxes. And a lot of times if it's shared custody, then they'll basically alternate years when they can claim each other's kids on the taxes. So if, or maybe if you have 2 siblings, then in a family, then maybe they split you. One gets to claim one and one gets to claim the other, or something along those lines. But they'll figure out a way to make it even. Nobody can be claimed more than one time. Does that make sense? So and the reason they know this is because when you claim a dependent, you have to have their social security number. So it claims however you've got record of being able to claim them. And the person doesn't have to be your child to claim them as a dependent. If my parents moved in with me and I was taking care of them and paying for their food and for their housing and all this other stuff, I could claim my parents as dependents on me because they're dependent on my income. So that's a little bit murky, but it's going to depend on your personal situation, and it's going to depend on the agreements that you've come to if it's a divorce situation. So I'm trying my best to answer some of these questions, but some of them are just going to be, it kind of depends. And I hate that, but it is just the way it is. A lot of you guys asked about the tax rates, like who determines what the different tax brackets are. Somebody was particularly frustrated with the fact that if somebody's making $35,000 a year and somebody else is making $85,000 a year, that they're in the same tax bracket. Yeah, it's true. They are right now. Now, things always are changing in the tax code, and the tax brackets do adjust sometimes from year to year and things like that. But currently, that's just how we do it. We set it up based off of this income to this income pays this percent, and this income to this income pays this percent, and this income to this income pays this percent. And typically, and what we've seen over the last course of history in our tax paying, is that those who make the most pay the most and the highest percent. And those who make the least pay the least and the least percent. Now, in your prompt, I asked you, does that system make sense, or should it be a flat rate across the board? And there was mixed responses, and we don't need to get into the specifics of that. It's really your opinion. But the determining factor there is whoever you elect to these offices determine these answers. They determine what the tax brackets are. They determine who pays the most into taxes. So I say this to you guys as future voters here in this next election. Pay attention to what people are saying about the tax rates. Pay attention to what they say about who should pay taxes and how much, because if your opinion was very much on one side versus the other, then you need to be thinking about how the choices of who you elect affect that. So I'm not going to tell you who believes what. I think that's something that you need to determine and understand for yourself. So I encourage you to watch the news, watch the debates and things when they come closer to the election time. But pay attention to what you thought made sense in that prompt and what different elected officials are saying, and make sure that that plays a role in who you choose to vote for. I want to try to remain unbiased and not taint you to one direction or another. So I want you guys just to be informed individuals and understand what's going on there. Another question came up. Is there a max amount of deductions or exemptions that you can take? There's a lot of questions about deductions and exemptions. At your guys' stage in your life, you're probably not going to have very many exemptions or deductions to worry about. Okay, a lot of those things come from things that you pay interest on, like your student loans or your mortgage or any credit that you have. Maybe bills that you pay, certain bills like medical bills and things like that. So if you personally are not paying for any of those things right now, you're not going to be able to claim them. That's why your taxes are pretty simple and why you should do them yourself, because there's not going to be a whole lot that goes into them. However, the older you get, the more things you start paying for, then you're going to see those deductions. And then the next question came, like, how will I know what I need to pay for those things? If you have a mortgage and it's through a bank, they're going to send you a form around tax time that says, here's how much interest you paid in. Use this form to complete your taxes. And if you're paying student loans, whoever you're paying those student loans to, whatever organization, they're going to send you a form around tax time that says, use this form to help you fill out your taxes. And so you're going to get these forms from these organizations and stuff. If you're paying into charitable organizations, they're going to send you a form that says, hey, here's how much you paid in the course of this year. Use this to help you filling out your taxes. So around that time, so basically all of January, pay a lot of attention to what mail's coming to your house. Don't just get in the habit of throwing stuff away because you don't think it's important. Make sure that none of it's stuff that can be used to file your taxes, because a lot of those organizations have to get you that information in the month of January. In the month of January, they have to get you that information so that way you can file your taxes before tax day. And that was another question that came up. When is tax day? April 15th is typically tax day. However, this year, because of all the coronavirus stuff, they've postponed it to the summer. So nobody's late at this point. If you haven't filed your taxes yet and you've been wondering if you should or shouldn't or whatever else, hopefully after our conversation today, you'll know that it's probably in your benefit to go ahead and do it because you're going to get money back, and also to have greater understanding as to how to actually go about doing that. Let's see here. Somebody asked, if I'm getting paid cash for my job, no taxes taken out, so like think about like babysitting or lawn mowing or something like that where maybe you get paid under the table, do I need to file taxes on that? Well, there's a couple of it depends situations. It depends on how much you made in a year's time, okay? Technically, if you need to file or not. But aside from that, legally, the answer is probably yes, depending on how much you made. If you made above the amount, yeah, technically you should probably file that. I say technically because is the IRS probably going to come knocking on your door if you babysat during the year and made more than the amount and they didn't get their tax cut? Probably not. They're probably not going to come knocking on your door because with all the issues that they have, you're small potatoes, okay? So you have to grapple with how you feel about that ethically. Do you feel like, hey, I worked under the table, I made, X amount of dollars, I'm okay with not paying taxes? Or are you one of those that's like, oh, I want to be above board and I always want to make sure I'm following the rules and all this other stuff? So you have to decide where you stand on that. I can't make that decision for you, nor do I want to. But just letting you know that that's pretty much how the government looks at it. Like technically, yes, you're probably supposed to file if you made above a certain dollar amount in the year. However, the legalities and if they want to put the time and effort into that, I don't know. Probably not. Okay. Also, somebody asked, if I claim all these deductions, how will the government know if they're accurate or things like that? Well, here's the thing. If you claim a lot, the government's probably going to check up on every single thing that you claimed and make sure that it is accurate. If there's anything that looks even the slightest bit fishy, that's when you're going to get something that we like to call audited. And that's when they're going to start to investigate your taxes and making sure that you paid correctly or that you didn't accidentally inflate something or anything along those lines. So you want to make sure that everything you do is accurate because it is a legal document and you are signing your signature to it saying that it is accurate. So anything that's not accurate or anything that's inflated, meaning making it look better than it is or worse than it is or anything along those lines, that's called tax fraud. And anything that you do that's not 100% on board could put you in danger should somebody choose to audit you, which means to investigate and look into your tax situation. So if you know you're doing everything above board and right, you don't have a reason to worry. But if you're trying to, push the system, use the system, you could be putting yourself in harm's way financially and legally. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. A lot of people asked about why is there a federal tax form and a state tax form? Why don't they just do one form for all of it? It's because every state is different in how they divide up how taxes are paid. And so one of the beauties of living in a democratic society is that we leave a lot of power to the states and we leave power to the federal government, and they each take care of their own things. And so as a result, taxes have to be divided up among their own things. There's needs and stuff in California that we don't have here in Kansas. And I'm glad that our Kansas taxes stay here in Kansas and benefit Kansas versus going to other states and benefiting some of the things that they think is important to their society and to their people. So there's a good to that. We've got the federal taxes that covers the whole U.S. and then we've also got our state taxes that take care of special things here. That's also a benefit to local taxes. So I love, as much as I don't love paying into taxes, I love that there are some taxes that take care of things that are needs right here in Lynn County, and they're not worrying about everything else. So there's a good reason for there to be some balance there and some distribution there. Let me see if I missed any of the other common questions before I move on. Okay, so somebody asked, what happens if I don't file my taxes? Okay, At this stage in your life, probably nothing. Unless you had a job where they took out not enough taxes and you paid nothing in and you need to file because you owe. So unless you owe money, nothing's going to happen to you if you don't file. You're just missing out on money that belongs to you if you don't file. If you don't pay your taxes or don't pay them on time, things that could happen, you could get a penalty fee. You could get somebody could come in and audit you and check up on your finances, and that's just going to be a headache and a hassle and take a lot of time and money and effort. But ultimately, most consequences that we see here are fines, or you could technically have jail time or something along those lines if you go a long period without paying your taxes. And I'm talking usually like multiple years. And there are people that have done that. Probably the greater thing is lying on your taxes and the benefits that could come, or the consequences that could come from that. But the biggest thing is if you know what the expectation is, meeting it, then you're fine. There are ways to file extensions, and so you can get more time to complete your taxes, and depending on your situation, that could be something that you need to do. In your guys' current situation where you're filing your own taxes for your own income, you probably don't need an extension. You just need to get to work and actually get it done. One of the things that you guys have probably heard about in the news is a stimulus check, and how the government has approved a stimulus check to come to each individual's household, and based on the number of kids that you have and based on the number of people that you have that are workers working in your home, that kind of stuff, you get so much money. And so that stimulus check, though, is not supposed to be deposited into your account until you filed your taxes if you're a tax filer. So just keep in mind that your parents and stuff like that, if they're thinking about if they should wait to do their taxes or do them now, the sooner the better if they really want to receive that stimulus check. So that's something to think about going forward. Most of you probably will not see a stimulus check individually, but hopefully your household will. So that's something to consider. Before we wrap things up, I know I didn't get to every single question because there's a lot of you and each of you asked 3 questions, but I tried to kind of combine things that were similar. Are there any special issues or questions that you maybe had that you would like me to answer at this time? Go ahead, Alex.
Well, okay, so like with deductions and medical expenses, like if we take medication and have to pay for that, could that be a deduction for taxes or no?
It would probably depend on the amount that you're paying and how good the records are to prove it. But typically it would be like a big surgery or something like that, maybe where you had a huge medical expense throughout that year or something along those lines. That would typically be something somebody would claim.
All right.
Any other questions? Okay, so let me go ahead and explain what this week's work will look like. So again, in Schoology, which I know Schoology has been a mess. Hopefully this week will be better. If it's not, we'll figure out some other method. But there are 2 more assignments in your week 2 folder now for this continuous learning stuff. So there's 2 assignments. The first one is filing a 1040 form. So you're actually going to get to look at 5 individuals. You're going to look at their situations, and you're actually going to complete a basic 1040 form for each of those individuals. So 5 different tax forms. By the time you get done with those 5 individuals, you should be able to see kind of where you are in your personal tax situation. And if you haven't yet filed your taxes, you should have a pretty good understanding of how to do so. Okay, in part 3 of that assignment, there's a little chart there where you're going to put in some of the information you learned from each of the 5 individuals. So I know that you completed the assignment and completed it accurately and well. So that's going to be kind of how I check in to see how you did. So make sure you read through the whole assignment and that you do each of the 3 parts. Okay, and that's your big assignment. That's probably going to take you a majority of the time designated for this class this week. The other assignment is going to be a lot more simple and not very time consuming. It's simply terminology. So I sent you guys a link to a Quizlet, And what you're going to do is on that Quizlet review, you're going to just go through the tax terms, and you can either just simply go through them like flashcards 3 times and show me your results, or you can do 3 different activities. Like I think there's a matching activity. There's various ways that you can review the information. I just want you to go through them at least 3 times and screenshot your results. That's it. And you're going to post your screenshotted results, and then you're done. So that's your second assignment. That won't take you very long, but hopefully you will begin to get those terms more concrete in your mind and hopefully give you a little bit more practice with them, because a lot of this tax stuff is really about terminology and understanding what's being said. Okay? But the other piece is actually knowing how to file, and that's why your other assignment goes with that. So those are the 2 assignments that you're going to work on this week. They're both due by Friday at 5 p.m. On Schoology. If you're having issues with Schoology, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. If I have to, I'll send you a copy via Google Gmail if I need to, okay? Ultimately, it'd be great if Schoology is working, and hopefully it is. Let's keep our fingers crossed it's working this week and that things are going smoothly. But, don't let that be a frustration to you. If it's becoming a problem, that's why I gave you the Google Voice number for me. Contact me, let me know, and we'll figure out a better solution. Okay, because ultimately the goal is not for this time period to be a frustration to you. It's just for you to still get the content you need so you can graduate on time and get that, credit done. All right, so that's the ultimate goal. Keep in mind, this is week 2 of your 6 weeks. So we're getting close there, guys. You're near the end. Any last questions before we dismiss? All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you later. Next Monday, we'll meet again. Peace out.